Hi guys, my name is Maya and I go by Damn Homie, and you're now watching Official Prison Talk. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Owen Hansen. He just got out of the feds and he's currently in the halfway house as we speak. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I had to get a pass today from the halfway house to allow us to have this interview because my curfew's at 6, but they let me overextend it today just to see you.
Good shit. How was your day?
Day's good so far. I made some ice cream and worked out, and now I'm here.
Where did you work out earlier? You said you were at the Bradley.
Yeah, I went to Bradley Martin's gym called Zoo Culture.
How was that?
It was cool. It was my first time. It's weird because you get there and everyone's got their t-shirts off. I'm like, man, I usually go out to Equinox and it's like forbidden to take your t-shirt off.
Oh, because in Equinox everybody's gay, so you do not want to do that over there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you go to
Yeah.
zoo culture and everyone's, flexing, taking pictures, and it was a different vibe for sure.
Yeah. Um was Bradley there or
No, he wasn't there. I guess he comes like only a couple days a week.
nice?
Thing
And
runs
where
itself.
is that? Is that in Los Angeles or
Yeah, it's in Encino actually, which is like about 10 miles from LAX, Los Angeles.
got it? All right. So let's begin. What led you into the feds?
I got involved in a racketeering charge. I got charged for a RICO with a 23-man indictment, and I was labeled as a kingpin in the indictment, and it was a gambling international gambling ring and a cocaine distribution ring.
And how did they indict you? Did somebody tell? Was there a snitch?
Yeah, we had a informant on our case. He ended up being an employee of mine that was laundering a bunch of money from Australia into the U.S., millions of dollars, and he ended up going bad. He lost 2.5 million of my money. And instead of working it out and paying me back, doing the right thing, he went to the feds and told them he was scared for his life. And for 5 years, they started investigating and watching him try to work with me, and eventually taking me down.
For 5 years? So what was he doing? Did he have a wire? Was he
Yeah, he was wearing a wire, making phone calls, saying, "Hey, I got to pay you back that 2.5 million I lost for you. Can you help me out? I'll launder some more money for you. Just give me an opportunity. I'm going to pay you back. I'm going to do the right thing."
wow, for 5 years? Imagine you being friends with somebody and for 5 years they were doing that every day, knowing like that they were trying to do that. Did you suspect at all that they were an informant or not?
Yeah, man, I knew something was up because he was so blunt on the phone, where he was like, "Hey, man, I can launder some more money for you."
Mm.
You don't talk like that on the phone.
Yeah, like I
But
wouldn't call in my drug dealer and be like, "Hey, can I have those drugs?" Like
yeah,
you speak in code.
you speak in code and you don't talk like that. You meet in person, right?
Yeah.
And I had a feeling, but his 2.5 million he lost, it was involving some very powerful people in the cartel, and I had to do the right thing and pay him back. So I didn't care at the time. I just let him do his thing, and I just kept working.
Wow. Okay, so you go to court, you how much time did they end up giving you?
They give me let's see, 255 months, which is a little over 20 years. And I got blessed. I was in prison, doing the first step back under President Trump, and I ended up going and get my master's degree, and ended up writing this book, The California Kid, working on a docu series with Mark Wahlberg's company. So I made the best out of it, and I got some good behavior, and under the First Step Act, I got some time off my sentence, and here I am. 10 years later, I'm out.
So the book is called again
The California Kid.
The California Kid. Okay, so tell me about the book.
It's a book I wrote because everyone, when I was incarcerated, everyone from Rolling Stones to Los Angeles Times to Vice magazine, they're all writing the wrong story. They're taking the story from the informant, and obviously he wants to make himself look like a good guy. So for this whole time I was incarcerated, I was like, man, this no one's telling the story the right way. I said, it's my time. I was waiting for the statute of limitations to come up, and I said, you know what, now it's my time to write the book and tell you how it really went down, because he obviously wants to paint this picture like he's some hero, but at the end of the day, it discusses everything from my childhood to playing football with Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, winning two national championships at USC, and then becoming this international drug kingpin.
Damn. How did it feel when he was telling a story and you're like, this is not what happened at all?
it was par for the course. This guy, he not only lost my money, but he went to the feds, and then he wants to tell a story like he's some folk hero. But it didn't bother me because I knew one day I was going to be able to tell my story. And I always heard that saying, what doesn't come out in the wash comes out in the rinse. So I was just waiting for the time to come, and here it is now.
Damn. I We always say what happens in the dark comes to light, but that's completely different. But
Yeah.
okay, so what did he write a book, or what, why was he even doing interviews? Like, who is he that people were even
Yeah, he,
caring?
he he's a nobody, but he wants to ride the coattails of my story, and that's what he did. He said this story wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for me, and trying to claim like he's some you know good guy, but at the end of the day, he was involved in this indictment. He should have been number two on my indictment. He was washing money for me, and he got scared. I'm not going to lie. He thought the cartel was coming after him. He lost his money. He didn't want to do the right thing and pay it back. So he went to the FBI and started working for him as an informant.
So you said that there was the time, now you could speak on it.
Yeah, there's this 10-year statute of limitation from the time of the crime, and the crime happened in 2012, 2013. So once that limitation came up, I told my ghostwriter Alex Foster. I said, "Hey, let's write the book. I'm ready to tell the real story." So now I tell about it. Working for the cartel, playing with professional athletes, making $1 million a day at one point, partying like rock stars in LA, living in Vegas, Costa Rica, Peru, Mexico, traveling private jets, living the life.
Damn. What, how do you even get involved with the cartel? Is it kind of like
Man,
in the movie Blow where he meets them and
no, to be honest, I was a bookie before, so I was taking bets all over the world, and one of my VIP customers out of Mexico introduced me to his uncle, and I never even met him. I just dealt with him through his nephew. And my VIP customer was said, "Hey, I got a whale for you." And a whale is someone that gambles big money, right? So he started losing like quarter million a week, and he'd bring me a duffel bag full of cash every week. I'm like, "Man, you got the best client. You got to keep that guy." And finally, the guy won, right? And I said, "Man, this guy finally won. Let's pay him as soon as we can, so he's excited. Make him feel special." So I gave him that VIP treatment. I paid him on a Monday, and he was stoked. He's like, "Man, who is this guy? Like this guy is unbelievable. I've never seen someone work like this." Because in the bookmaking business, usually everyone pays on a Thursday. So I paid him Monday morning, like bright and early, 8 a.m. Right when he woke up. We had the bag delivered in Mexico. And I remember that day, man. He's like, "Man, I'm impressed. Whoever this kid is in LA, I want to meet him. I want him to work for me." And I didn't know who he was at the time, but I was ambitious. And next thing you know, I'm working for the cartel side by side.
damn, that's insane. What were some of the
Yeah.
best times like that you remember?
Man, I've had some. There's so many of them. Probably Costa Rica. I had a mansion overlooking the rainforest and the Pacific Ocean, and I remember my favorite time is one of my football teammates from USC. He's played in the NFL, and he invited 20 of his NFL buddies to come for his bachelor party, and I rented out my house and four other mansions in this rainforest with toucans and monkeys and the most beautiful women in the world, and we had like probably like 60 girls come in on a school bus, and I had like 25 NFL players, and I gave them the time of their lives.
Damn, that sounds lit. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, what was like from that time, what was the most money you made in one day?
$1 million in one day was the average for about 3 weeks, and then I remember I had one score between myself and my boss in the cartel. Made 5 million, and we split it, so 2.5 million in one day.
Damn. So the
Yeah, it was a
guy
good
that
day.
ended up that was money laundering, did he end up getting any time or not at all?
No, they gave him immunity. So when you work for them long enough, they grant you immunity, so you can't be indicted on the case. And I believe he's still working because I have a friend of mine that got indicted like 9 years later, and he was working on his case as well.
That's crazy because you would
Yeah.
think like you get someone indicted, you would just be done after that because they can't keep using the same snitch. But no, snitches will keep going.
Yeah, they get paid. They get a percentage of everything that's made.
Okay, so recently I had beef with somebody and I kept saying they were an informant, but everyone kept saying there's no paperwork. Is it true that not all informants have paperwork?
Yeah, listen, there's if they're working, they're not going to have paperwork in it because they got to get busted first, right? So they got to get arrested. So my informant, for instance, he never got busted, right? He never got arrested. He's not part of the indictment, so there's no way you can prove it. Obviously, if you take it to court and and you go to trial, then that obviously has to come out in the trial that, hey, this guy's an informant. We didn't disclose it because we don't want to jeopardize the bust. So yeah, that is true. There's not always paperwork, but most of the times, if they've been arrested, there's going to be paperwork on the informants. They're snitches.
Okay, so you end up getting convicted, and then when you get into the feds, what's some of the craziest shit that you seen right off the bat?
Right when I started, I got there and I just observed, right? I was just looking around like, what the fuck have I gotten into? I'm this little pretty boy from LA, went to USC, and people are looking at me like, man, what's this guy doing here, right? So I'm just watching. People are tripping out on me. I'm this big, tall athlete, and they're like, man, what is this guy doing here? And no one knew my status, right? So I remember I was very good friends with the Mexicans on the street, and so when I got to prison, I speak Spanish pretty fluent, and I just start talking to these guys, and they're like, man, who is this Wedo, right? And I'm just watching, and I'm just learning, how to walk in there, how to talk in there, how to work out in there. So for me, the most like eye-opening thing is watching these guys work out, right? Like how you're in a 6 by 8 cell for 23 hours a day while you're fighting your case. So for me, fitness is my whole life, right? I've been playing sports, eating healthy, being active. So the first thing I learned is like, okay, how am I going to how am I going to be able to work out, right? I'm not going to be doing burpees every day. So I learned to lift weights with water bags, right? So you get a laundry basket and you empty your laundry basket, and then you take these trash bags from we use trash bags just for everyday trash to throw food away. So you take the trash bag, a clean one, and you fill it up with water from your cell. And the way you do it is you take your coffee cup and you fill up 25 coffee cups in that trash bag and you tie it off. And then
Wow.
you do another one in another laundry bag and you put those 25 coffee cups of water in each. So you got 25 pounds here and 25 pounds in this laundry bag. And you learn to curl it with your laundry bag. So it's in your laundry bag. So you're doing your curls. And then you got to get creative. Like, how are we going to do chest? It's chest day. So you go to the guard and you say, hey, officer, can I help you clean your room or clean your office? And you go and you clean the office for the guard, right? And now all of a sudden the guard's busy answering the phone. So you take that broomstick that you're using to clean the guard's office and you take it down to your cell and you discombobble it. So you take the actual brush of the broom off. And now you take those two bags that you had there, you got two laundry bags full of water in them, and you put holes in them. And then what you do is you put the broomstick with the two water bags, and then you lie down on your bunk bed in your cell and you do your bench press with the broomstick. So you're bench pressing with two water bags. And as soon as you're done, you try to knock it out real fast. Like we got 10 minutes, right? So we hit it. You got your celly in there and you hit that real quick. We get 4 sets each. And then I put my khakis back on and I run up there and I pretend like nothing happened. You're just sweeping that office, cleaning it for the CO.
Wait, but you're in a room by yourself like for 23 days out of, I thought that was the whole, no?
No, no, 23 hours a day when you're fighting your case.
Oh.
You're fighting your case 23 hours a day. You're in the cell like 1 hour of the day. They let you out of the day room, and the day room's like kind of where you get to walk, you write some letters. If there's computers, get to check your discovery. So it just depends. Different prisons or different spots,
Wait,
have
so you're
different
in
rules.
your cell for 23 hours out of the day. So if you're fighting your case for 4 years, you're doing that for 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I fought my case for 2.5 years, but the
Did
best
they
thing to
give you time
do.
served?
No, no, I wish I had to go to federal prison. Time served is when you go fight your case and then you go see the judge and he sentences you to time served when you get to just walk out that day. I had to actually fight my case and then go to prison for the next 7.5 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
every place is different, but if you do have a good attorney, what they do is they get you out and they say, hey, we need to see Mr. Hansen for 3 hours a day, and then they put you in a certain room with a lawyer or a private investigator, and you just look at your discovery for many hours just to get out of that cell, get out of the prison.
Because it's like they want you to go crazy by keeping you in there.
Yeah, they want you to take a deal, right? So the longer you're in there, you're like, fuck it, let's just take a deal. Like you want to get out of there because you want to go to prison, because prison's a lot better than jail.
Okay, so after you were done fighting your case and you end up going to prison, did you see how quick was it before you seen a stabbing?
Oh man, right when I got there, I remember I saw a stabbing in let's see, 2017 when I arrived to Lompoc. There was two blacks going at it, Crips and Bloods, and they were going at it in the bathroom. Next thing you know, a guy was getting stabbed left and right. And then I remember you fast forward and you see a couple of deaths. I remember two guys overdosed on heroin inside the cells. And then I saw maybe like three hangings. The guys hang themselves off the rail. So they'll put a sheet on their neck and they'll jump off the rail and hang themselves. I saw that like three times. And then I remember when I was fighting my case and when I got transferred, there's a spot in MDCLA, which is where all the Mexican mafia guys are, from like the East Los Angeles gangs to Central, all the bad areas in Los Angeles. There's a lot of Mexican mafia members. They're like, we call them made men, La M, which is very powerful gang. And they put them there. They're so powerful that they have to have them separated because they can't be together. I remember when I was fighting my case, they put a hit on a guy that owed some money. He owed like $2,000 on a drug debt. And I remember it was during COVID, and this made man, this Mexican mafia member said, "Hey, just he told his soldiers, he said, just tap him a little, give him a little poke, so he feels it and he pays his money." Well, the guys fucked up and they poked him too hard, and the guy ended up dying. And it was a Mexican mafia case now. So it was a mess. The FBI shut down the whole prison. We were locked down for like 9 months straight, and that's when I started writing this book.
Wow.
Yeah,
How long
I
were
was
you
losing
in
my mind.
prison already before you decided to write the book?
20, let's see, 2021, I started because I knew the statute of limitation was up in 2022. So it took me like 4 years to write the book, and I released it as soon as I got out.
So were you writing it, were you telling basically the person your story little by little every day and they were just writing it, or did you write it and have them just fix
No,
up like
it was a little of both. To be honest, it was like you get 15 minutes a day on the federal prison phones. So what I would do is I would call my ghostwriter and I would tell him my story for like 9 months straight, telling him 15 minutes every day. Hey, this is how it went down. This is how it went down. Blah blah blah. And then when we get locked down, if there's a riot or something, I wouldn't be able to talk to him for you know 20 days, a month at a time. So I would just write constantly, like notes. Hey, this is where you continue chapter 4. I was living in Redondo Beach when I started hanging out with the Northside Redondo gang, and then I would continue it. And then once the lockdown came up, I would call him and be like, "Hey, did you get my notes?" He goes, "Yeah, we're good. I got them." So it was a long process. It was a back and forth process, but we made the best of it.
were there any rapes that you seen?
I saw rapes, yeah, but I tell people you get raped only if that's your thing, right? So if you're a transgender and you want to get raped, that's on you. But people, it's not like the movies. It's not like American History X or these movies, these prison movies where you're seeing guys get fucked in the shower. That's not how it goes down. It goes down only if that's what you're into.
So you've never seen anyone take a booty?
No, not unless it was consensual.
Damn. Okay, then I have
Yeah.
a next question. So in LA, I've heard a lot of stories about people getting peanut butter up their ass. Is that a thing in the feds or no?
No, I've never heard that in the feds. That might be something in the state, but I've never heard about it in the feds.
Yeah, apparently it'd be guys that what they do is they'll knock you out, and then when you get knocked out, they put peanut butter in your butt, and this way it's a mental torture. You don't know whether they raped you or not.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's definitely something we're not doing on my side of town.
So in the feds, was it segregated? Like, was it?
Oh yeah, prisons segregated, especially in the Los Angeles area and in most of the California state prisons. The very racial. So, I grew up around Mexicans my whole life. I grew up, my co-defendants are Crips. I got co-defendants that are Bloods. I got co-defendants that are, you know, from cartel. I have co-defendants that work for the DEA that were private investigators. So definitely a different walk of life when you get to prison, right? So my best friend on the street was a Crip, and when I get to prison and I see him, we can't chop it up at all. We can't share food like we do on the street. We can't work out
Wow.
like we do on the street. Everything's looked at. Your shot caller for the whites are watching you, the blacks are looking at you, and you're looked at like you're looked down upon, right? You're looked down like you're weak. So it's one of those things that was very difficult for me, playing sports my whole life and being around brothers my whole life, and that's what I live for, right? I'm a competitive dude. So when you turn that off and say, hey, you can't talk to that guy, or you can't play sports with him, or eat from the same bag of chips, it's a different style for me.
So what are my choices? So okay, I get to prison. I want to be with the Bloods, but that's like not allowed. Okay, so is there only Aryan brothers, or is there like normal white people?
So what I would be an independent white boy, right? So I fall under the Aryan Brotherhood. So there's an Aryan Brotherhood, and then underneath them, there's skinhead gangs, there's Nazi lowriders, there's all different types of gangs. But if you're like myself, who's not from a gang, who comes from the street and say educated, you have to still fall under the white car. Now, since I have cartel connections, I could technically fall under the Paisa car, which is Mexicans, mostly Mexicans like Mexico. That's considered the Paisa car. So, or if you're a Sereno, where you grew up in like a street gang, like a Mexican street gang, then you fall under the Serenos, which is very popular in California. But like I said, I wasn't from a gang, so I had to fall under the white car.
Do you get special privileges because you were involved with the cartel?
No, I mean, here and there, right? So, I have many people come and give me blessings and give me ceviche and special meals because they knew I worked for the cartel, right? I had one guy, I remember they wrote me a song while I was in prison, corrido, and it was a Mexican folk song about, my journey through Australia and working for the cartel. So that was pretty cool.
Damn, that's amazing. What was the worst fight you witnessed?
Man, I saw a couple guys get knocked off the line, where the guards come in and they got to pepper spray them. And the rule in prison, when you fight, you don't stop until the guards come, or someone's dead. So these guys were beating this guy, just whooping his ass. They're knocking him off the line. They found out he was a sex offender, and he was a white guy, and they checked his paperwork, and he didn't want to come up with the paperwork, so they did a little background check on the cell phone. Someone had a cell phone inside the joint, and they checked and found out his paperwork was no good, that he was a sex offender, that he was molesting boys that were like 13 years old. So they had the skinheads go knock him off, and they had like four of them jump him, and they whooped his ass so bad that the correctional officers had to come in like six at a time with pepper spray and shut down the whole yard to stop this guy from being killed.
Do you know how many years he had?
He had the sex offender had 10 years, and the guys that did it had like 15 years, and they had to send them back to court, and they each got an extra 5 years for doing that.
Only 5
Mm.
years?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean only? I mean, these guys were already in prison, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're in prison, and you should know better. If you're a sex offender, you should know that you can't walk that yard. You should tell them right away, like, hey, I can't be here, and they're not going to put you out with the wolves.
So why don't they just say that from the beginning? Hey, like I'm a sex offender. Maybe I shouldn't be here.
A lot of guys just they want to hide, right? They want to pretend like they're there for drugs, or they're somebody that they're not.
But they know eventually someone's gonna find out. So why don't they from the beginning tell themselves like, yeah, I should just like not be here because
To
they're gonna
you,
find out.
to be honest, sometimes these guards, they know that they're sex offenders, and what they'll tell them is like, no, you have no other choice. You got to go right now, and they'll send them out there because the
Oh.
guards want to see them get fucked up. Trust me.
Oh, because I was gonna say you would think a guard be like, "Are you sure you want to be here?" Like, or
No,
I've
they
heard
like they
stories
like
where
to
the
see it
guards will tell the prisoners what the person's in there for. That's why
many
they
times.
need to have fake paperwork or they're fucked.
Yeah, many times the guards will tell us right off the rip.
That's kind of wrong though, no? I mean, it's not wrong because it's a child molester and they should get what but they're there technically to protect them,
Correct.
kind of.
I don't condone violence, but at the end of the day, if I had a child and someone was touching my child, I'd probably say go for it, right? And I'm sure
Yeah.
you would too.
I feel like the child molester should just get the death penalty automatically.
Yeah, it's if you're gonna take some innocent person and touch them in ways that they don't even know what you're doing, absolutely.
Yeah, especially like if it's children. Like women are one thing because with women, there have been so many times where women even, say that they lied. So to the point where the women that don't lie, you can't even believe them sometimes. With children, there's no lying because a child is innocent and once you touch them, they're never the same. So it's like automatically, I just don't understand how they get less time than even somebody that worked with the cartel, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
But that's the system. So what was the toughest fight you had?
I didn't really get into fights. I'm not gonna lie. I was taught that in prison there's a few words you're not allowed to use, right? And it's the word bitch, punk, and lame, right? So if you're ever called those and you don't do anything, then you're considered one of those, right? And if you don't do something, then your shot caller is going to take care of you one way or another. So I remember one guy said, "Man, you're acting like a bitch," and he said it on the day room, and other races heard him. And I was behind a fence when he said it, so I couldn't do anything at the time. And I said, "Hey," I said, "go put your shoes on right now because I'm coming in that cell and we're going to see who the bitch is," right? So I remember out of your manhood, you can't be called a bitch. You can't be disrespected, right? Especially when there's other races around. Like if he said it in front of just me, I'd say, "Hey, man," I'd give him a warning, right? Because no one heard. But since other people heard, I had to go in the cell. I said, "What do you want to do?" And I remember I smacked him so hard he fell over. I said, "Who's the bitch now?" I said, "You don't ever disrespect me in front of another race." I said, "You should know better." So that was the only time. And after that, everyone's like, "Man, no one's gonna fuck with that guy." I'm 6'3", 210 pounds. So you learn to respect the people around you in prison. It's much more respected than the outside world. Like when I cross a path to go in front of a TV, that's like a sign of disrespect. So you go around the TV area. You're not allowed to, walk this way on the track. You got to walk with the flow of traffic. So there's certain rules that you got to abide by, and you learn to say excuse me even if you're not in the way. If someone says excuse me, you say excuse me back. It's just a respect thing.
Yeah. So you said you got your master's in prison. What was that like?
Man, I had to do something. I'm an entrepreneur my whole life. I'm shaking, I'm baking, I'm making money, right? So I was like, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I was like, man, I'm going to go back to school. So I remember getting my master's degree, and it took so long. It was during COVID. It took me like 3.5 years, and I got it in business administration. I graduated with honors. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? I got to start a company, right? You're learning all this stuff about business, and it makes you so motivated. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start an ice cream company. So I started this protein ice cream company in prison, and it was my hustle. People were like, "What do you mean protein ice cream? How did you make that?" And I learned to make ice cream in prison, and people were like, "No, there's no way." And it was a combination of protein shakes, milk, banana, and peanut butter, and I would use the coffee creamer and I would put it all in a peanut butter jar and I'd shake it up and I would drop it in this mop bucket. When you say a mop bucket, what's a mop bucket? To clean your cell, right? So I'd put all these protein shakes in these mop buckets, and I would just put a bunch of ice because we don't have freezers or refrigeration in prison, and I'd drench it with ice, and then I'd take salt. I got rock salt from the utility department, and I'd throw all this rock salt, and it would just crackle, pop, 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 pop. And then you cover it with your prison khakis, and you keep it nice and cool. And every hour you shake it for like 15 minutes, and after 4 hours you have ice cream. It turns into rock hard ice cream. So that was my hustle. People were like, "Man, he's making ice cream," and I'd sell it for $15 a peanut butter jar, which was like it cost me $1.50 to make. Right? I was like, "Man, this is a good hustle." And
Yeah.
I remember that was my hustle for many years, and I was making some weeks more money than the guards
In prison, right?
in prison. Yeah,
That's crazy because like a lot of people be making alcohol and shit, and I be wanting to tell my friends like, you drinking that every day, you're only like making it worse for yourself. But if I love anything, like I make like protein pancakes. So when I
yeah,
heard you have protein ice cream, I was like, oh, that's exactly what I need because I don't like the vegan ice cream. I don't like soy ice cream, but a protein ice cream I would eat. So what is
yeah.
the
You love
company
it.
called?
So when I got out, I was like, I told my buddy Roland from the East Coast who introduced us to, and I said, I told him my story, right? I said, man, I wrote this book. He says, well, what were you doing in there? I said, dude, I became a fucking hustler again. I said, I started hustling ice cream, and I was telling him I was making protein ice cream. He's like, man, why don't you continue to do it? I'm like, man, no one's gonna buy protein ice cream on the street. I said, I'm sure that's already out, right? So I started doing some research. I got out from the halfway house. Still in the halfway house, and I'm doing this research, and there's nobody that sells an ice cream bar or an ice cream with high protein.
Yeah.
So I remember my first day I was able to get out of the halfway house to work, right? I started working for an ice cream company, and I started to perfect my recipe from prison. And now I have a company, California Ice Protein, named after the California kid. And we're already in literally, let's see, 6 gyms, 2 nutrition stores, and people love it. I got to keep it going. We're going to have 50 freezers in Florida next month, and 50 freezers in California, and 10 freezers in Texas, and we're going to slang this ice cream like the cocaine in the 80s.
Yay. I can't wait to try it. When is it gonna be in Miami?
You'll have it in Miami within a month. I'm actually going to send some samples to Roland probably within the next 2 weeks. So I'll make sure you try it. You're going to love it.
Yes. Okay, I need it because I'm so glad you made it because I always have that attitude too. Like that probably exists, but my father always says like you just got to come up with something that no one else came up with first, and it could be the most simple thing, but it's like it's your idea.
It's
So
simple, and I tell people, you know what? Let these people come up with it, right? Because no one can say they have my story, right? It's like Dave's Killer Bread. Everyone makes bread, but have you ever had Dave's Killer Bread? It's like, okay, you're supporting it because he went to prison, he came out, and he made this like bread where he put sunflower seeds, granola. He put all these healthy things on this bread, and now all of a sudden, it's a $2 billion company, right? So he had that story that everyone's like cheering for that second chance, that resilience, and that's at the end of
wait,
the day.
the protein bread, he really went to
Yeah,
prison?
yeah, 15 years,
I
yeah.
didn't know that. I actually eat that.
Yeah, it's great, it's healthy, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. No,
Yeah,
but I've
so
noticed a lot of people that go to prison, they all get their GEDs. Not everybody, but most of the people I know. A lot of people get their education or they start writing a book. And it's crazy that people on the outside, you have all this freedom to do that, and they're not doing it because it's like you almost need to just force yourself to sit down for a year or two and do it. And it's impossible to do it out here because it's like life is so fast paced. But
very fast. And you know what? You get very creative, right? You're in that 6 by 8 cell looking at the ceiling, right? And all you do is think, like my mind thinks. I'm like, okay, what's next? Like, right? Okay, if this protein ice cream blows up, can I be a kingpin in like the ice cream world? Like that'd be cool, right? Like
yeah.
we'll call it Kingpin Creamery, right? And then it'll just like we're just like thinking of ideas in there, like, okay, I got to figure out the next score because I like to hustle, right? If I could hustle ice cream that's like a healthy treat, I'll feel a lot better in life.
How does it feel doing something legal, going from illegal activities?
Listen, it feels great. I never look over my shoulder anymore. My wallet's not as fat. I'm not gonna lie. That's a very humbling experience, but I know I'll get back eventually. But right now, I tell people it's like I used to put these bad things on the streets, and now I'm putting healthy treats on the streets. So it's like it's like okay, I feel better about living. Right before, I just did this to make that money, live this fake life. Right, it's very vain. You're flying private jets, and you're buying ladies Hermes bags and Chanel bags and all these nice watches and jewelry, right? And at the end of the day, are those people still there when you go to prison? Hell no. So you learn who your true friends are, and you realize life's not all about that fast glitz and glamour, because that glitz and the glamour put me in the slammer.
Because during that time when you had everything, was there ever a day where you were kind of miserable, like before you went to prison?
There was, right, every day I was doing drinking alcohol, sniffing coke, popping Vicodin, and I was so worried because I knew I had that fear of getting caught, and that fear is just like it's so bad on your health. It's so bad on your mental health, and you just deteriorate. And I remember I was aging so fast, and then I went to prison. I was like, okay, now I can finally relax. It's done. That life's over, right? So when I got out, I'm like, man, I got to continue this healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. So, how long are you at the halfway house for?
20 months total. I got about 3 more months left.
Damn, you're almost there. And then is
I'm
there
right there.
probation or it's parole
Yeah,
or
and then I go on 10 years parole, which is like the same as probation, and that's supervised. So what happens is they make you do a piss test once a month, and they call you in to make sure you're working and you're not fucking up.
Damn, but you're good. And I feel like it's $1 billion business, to be honest, because as somebody that's been working out their whole life, I think that I have a feeling I'm gonna see your product at like, what's it called?
Air
What's
One.
the? I was about to say CVS.
Oh
What's
yeah,
the?
well, there's Whole Foods, there's Walmart, there's listen, we don't care where we're at. At the end of the day, we just want to sell product, right? We could be at
Yeah,
Equinox, Lifetime, we could be anywhere that people are going to enjoy a healthy treat after a workout, right? I tell people it's like a protein shake on a stick.
yeah. Was that your favorite meal that you were making when you were in prison?
Yeah, that for sure. As far as like good meal, like we made unhealthy meals, like where we'd make these burritos and we'd take an iron, right? You're allowed to use irons to iron your khakis when you go on visits. So we'd steal an iron and we'd iron our burritos with it, and it'd be like a grilled stuffed burrito from Taco Bell. So that was like a hustle for some of the Mexicans, that they'd make you grilled stuffed burritos, and then you'd buy them with stamps. Stamps was the currency.
Damn, but 10 years. What happens if you violate? Do you go back for the 10 years or?
Yeah, you can. It's up to the judge at the end of the day. So you just gotta mind your p's and q's and make sure you're doing the right thing in life, and that's to be a productive member to society.
Damn. So what's some advice you could give to other people who are currently in a halfway house and they're having a very hard time? Their person, it's like constantly they might violate them. Like, what would be your advice to them?
Never give up, right? If I can do it from a 6x8 cell, and people are like, "Oh man, how did you do it?" It doesn't matter. You just got to keep going, right? And don't doubt yourself. I tell people, like, if I can do it with no money, zero resources, anybody should be able to do it. And people that are in prison, it's so easy to go back because they're not making money. They can just say, "Hey, I'll go get the 3 meals a day and sleep 8 hours a day in my bunk bed and go back to prison." That's how they look at life, but that's not what life is about, right? It's about being free, and I tell people freedom is the most precious currency on this world. And I can say that I see guys in the halfway house, they're not motivated. You Once you start working out and you feel better and those endorphins are released, I think it will motivate you to go make that money and have a successful life again.
Yeah. So what's the plan for the next 5 years?
Just
Push the
keep pushing, push the
keep
protein ice
pushing.
cream, do some speaking engagements, maybe to younger kids, so they don't go back down the same path I went down at a young age, and just show what's right and wrong, and tell them, hey, once you go down that path of illegal activity, it's so hard to get out, because once you taste that dirty money, it's that fast cash that people want for forever, right? And you can't go forever. You're going to get caught eventually and land yourself in federal prison like myself.
Yeah. So if you could tell your 15-year-old self some advice, what would it be today?
Stay in school, and just stick to anybody that you meet in the legitimate business network as much as you can, right? So you never know who you're going to be in school with. I was in school with the CEO's son of Sony, right? I was in school with the owner of Quicksilver. So there's all these people I could have just networked with, and been a legal millionaire by now, but I chose that illegal activity, and cost me 10 years of my life.
Yeah. But clearly you're one of our success stories because I see like you have a very bright future and you're doing everything you're supposed to do. And I know it's a fucked up situation right now, but I think for you, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So before, once everything's said and done, what would you want to be remembered as?
I would want to be remembered as that guy that had resilience, right? Had his back against the wall and figured out how to get out of any situation, and that was including federal prison. I'm out. I'm telling my story now, and I want people to realize, like, you got to believe in a second chance. This guy Owen Hansen's a prime example. He showed his resilience, and it's a comeback story of a lifetime.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here, Owen
Yeah,
Hansen. What is
thanks
the
for
book
having me.
called again?
The book is called The California Kid, and you can get it on the website, thecaliforniakid.com. And everybody that buys the book on the website gets a signature and a personal message from me.
Hey, good shit. Now you have to
Yeah,
buy one. Once again,
that's
thank
right.
you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure interviewing you. Was there any last words you want to say?
No, just remember to fight on, because that's what Trojans do.
Yes. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. Again, I'm excited to try that ice cream ASAP. And please come back. We definitely don't want this to be the last time we speak to you. Come back, after there's ice cream in Miami. We definitely got to do another interview.
Yes, I'll come in Miami when and we'll speak there when we got some ice cream.
Good shit. Thank you so
All
much
right. Take
again.
care. Have a good
You
one. Take care,
too.
darling. Bye.
Bye. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. This has been Official Prison Talk. Stay tuned for tomorrow.